Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin here at home as the 47.9 trillion naira is the figure for Nigeria's total proposed budget for next year. The figure was approved by the Federal Executive Council as part of the 2025-2027 medium-term expenditure framework. The plan includes 9.22 trillion naira in new borrowing to finance deficit with an oil benchmark of $75 per barrel. State House correspondent Adesua Omorwan has a breakdown of the figures.
The Federal Executive Council reconvenes on Thursday, a week after its meeting was postponed to honor the passing of the Chief of Army Staff. This meeting also follows President Bola Tinubu's return from an overseas trip. At the session, the federal government unveiled a proposal of 47.9 trillion naira budget for the 2025 fiscal year. Minister of Budget and Economic Planning emphasizes that despite the difficult global economic environment, Nigeria's economy has shown positive growth in 2024. He also shares details of the approved medium-term expenditure framework for 2025 to 2027.
Achieving a positive growth rate in 2 quarters continuously, significantly, with the growth rate of 3.19% in real terms in the second quarter of 2024. However, it acknowledged that the government will continue to tackle inflation, strengthen economic resilience, support the vulnerable, and rebuild fiscal buffers. It includes projections, especially for the first time, provisions for contribution to the development commissions that have been passed by the National Assembly or are in the process of being passed by the National Assembly.
Speaking on the key parameters, the 2025 budget targets a conservative oil price benchmark of $75 per barrel with an estimated oil production of 2.06 million barrels per day.
An oil price benchmark of $75 a barrel for 2025, oil production of 2.06 million barrels a day, as well as an exchange rate of 1,400 naira to $1 and GDP growth of 4.6%. And this includes a borrowing of 13.8 trillion, which is 3.87% of the estimated GDP.
The framework also projects a GDP growth rate of 4.6% for 2025. Alongside a commitment to fiscal reforms, Minister Bagudu says government will continue efforts to sustain the deregulation of petroleum prices and reduce production costs within the sector. Bagudu is also confident that the January to December budget cycle will be maintained. In addition to the budget framework, the Council also approved the establishment of a 250 billion naira real estate investment fund aimed at addressing Nigeria's critical housing shortage.
Provision of low-cost, long-term mortgages. When I say low-cost, we are talking about low double-digit, maybe 11, 12%, maybe even less, depending on market conditions. And that will be achieved by attracting long-term savers, life insurance companies, maybe pension funds within the limits of what is allowed.
The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning says the government's fiscal efforts were on track, with key non-oil revenue streams performing better than anticipated. The 2025 proposed budget of 47.9 trillion naira, expected to be submitted to the National Assembly either on Friday or Monday, is an increase from the 27 trillion naira proposed in 2023. Adesua Omorwan, Arise News.
Well, meanwhile, Finance Minister and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, says that the federal government is seeking approval for a $2.2 billion external borrowing program. The financing will be raised through a combination of euro and sukuk bonds, pending approval from the National Assembly. Edun explains that the exact structure of the borrowing will depend on market conditions and the advice of financial advisors. But once the National Assembly approves the plan, the government aims to access the funds as soon as possible. He also highlighted the success of Nigeria's domestic dollar bond issuance as a sign of the country's financial market resilience.
With the approval of a US $2.2 billion financing program made up of access to the international capital market for some combination of a Euro bond offer and a Sukuk bond offer. Perhaps a Euro bond of about $1.7 billion and Sukuk financing of another $500 million. The actual makeup of the financing, which will be done as soon as the National Assembly has considered and seen fit to hopefully approve of the borrowing plan and the external borrowing approval is given, it will be done this year as soon as possible after approval.
All right, so there we have it, proposed budget at this stage for 2025, which has already elicited a lot of different reactions from the public space. Rufai, your take on these developments?
So a couple of things, Vimbai. At first, let's look at the parameters. I don't think the practicality is really there. Take, for instance, they're saying over 2 million per barrel, at the benchmark of over 2 million per barrel. Yesterday, the NNPC claimed that they are now doing 1.8 million per barrel, but that number has not been ratified by OPEC. OPEC does not count condensate. Probably did they count condensate because just at the end of a couple of days ago, OPEC's October number for Nigeria was about 1.4 million barrels. So November has not finished. How did the NNPC all of a sudden said we are now recording 1.8 million per barrel? The number has not been ratified by the NUPRC, and OPEC has also ratified the numbers. So that number is suspect until we see what the OPEC numbers is, and let's see probably we can add the condensate to it. But the benchmark of over 2 million barrels, are we really sure about that? Look at the parameters of dollar to 1,400, that there are projections by Fitch that dollar might hit close to 2,000, 2028. Are we being serious about those parameters, dollar to 1,400? So we should also look at that. They're also talking about benchmark of $75 on the international scene. Look at West Texas Intermediate, about $60-something. Look at even Brent crude. It's inching to about $70-something. And when you look at it, with a Trump emergence, they are going to pump more. And when they pump more, prices will come down. Prices are already down in the pumps in America as we speak. So we are looking at a climate of a very low, what's it called now? Dollar per barrel for oil. And you are saying $75 per barrel benchmark? I also doubt that parameter. Then we are taking another deficit of over 13 trillion. If you add that to the borrowings we have already of the 132 or 134 trillion, that's close to 147 or close to 150 trillion. That's going to be in our debts. Then hope this budget is not going to be padded. Because that 47.5 trillion number, you have not pushed it to the National Assembly. When you now push it to the National Assembly, they will pad their own there. Add all sorts of unscrupulous items. Then when you look at the borrowing that Mr. Odibali Edu is talking about, this over 2 trillion is going to the bonds. Are we really serious about all this borrowing? What are we doing with the money? The other month, there was a story that was released that they said there was a system glitch, but they couldn't pay their bondholders on time. So are we being careful about all of these parameters that we are looking at? How is it going to spur growth? And please, Nigerians, this is a clarion call to you. Once this budget is passed and the line item are released, everybody should scrutinize the line item for all the budget padding and all the corruption that happens. And this budget must count. But I feel that number is quite a lot. From about 27 trillion budget, we're going to about 47 trillion, over 20 trillion increase. For monies we do not have. Now we have to borrow over 13 trillion adding to the deficits. Why yo?
Absolutely, Rufai. I think a lot of people have questions to ask pertaining to this budget. And, you know, this week, Saudi Arabia, because of the president's visit, Saudi Arabia has been a topic of conversation. I bring it back into the conversation because of Vision 2030. So Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 is based off of the fact that they already know, they've studied the trends, and they know that the oil price is going to peak and start to taper off at some point. This is a global fact that the whole world has come to accept, that in the next few years, oil is going to start dwindling in its price. Now, having said this, it's still a little bit surprising that we find ourselves with another budget that's based on oil and borrowing. Rufai has already unpacked some of the volatility in the oil sector, but I just want to lend my voice a little bit more to that. When you look at the price that has been pegged, which is $75 per barrel, it's hugely optimistic for many who work in the oil and gas sector, as most banks on Wall Street, most of the people who are responsible for these predictions for the next year are putting the price at a little bit lower. Yes, there is a wide range of $70 to $80, but Citigroup is looking at as low as $60. There's an analysis that's also brought a forecast of as low as $40 per barrel as far as oil is concerned. So having had all of this information available in the public space, one would have hoped that we could have come up with a budget that doesn't heavily rely on oil, and especially at such a hugely optimistic price. Now, looking at the budget itself, it's a 66.4 increase off of the 27 trillion budget of last year. But however, when you look at the assumptions of this budget, which is a decreased oil price, in 2024, we were looking at 77.96 as the assumed oil price. So we're looking at a decreased oil price, and we've also accepted the reality of a depreciated naira. So last year's budget pegged the naira at 750 to the dollar, and now the government has accepted that, well, the naira is not going to appreciate back to that value. They've settled at 1,400. Currently, market realities are looking at between 1,650 to 1,700 is what's happening currently with trade. So is it possible to get to 1,400 for next year? Absolutely, but is the necessary work being done? My feeling is that the implied assumption that is being made here is possibly that the Dangote refinery is going to come into full effect, and that the petroleum supply will be domesticated and some dollars will be freed up as opposed to importing. But again, when you look at the back and forth that's happening between the Dangote refinery and the distribution chain, it leaves so much to be desired. And one would proceed with very careful and cautious optimism with regards to that. So all in all, I think most people are not happy to wake up to this huge number. Again, based off of the devaluation, the value of this budget is actually very similar to the value of the 2024 budget when you look at it in real terms in relation to the exchange rate. However, the naira term is still massively increased. Okay, to our next story now, where amid his cancer battle, King Charles III celebrated his 76th birthday yesterday. It was a colorful celebration of King Charles III's birthday on Thursday, the 14th of November, at the British Deputy High Commissioner's residence in Ikoyi, Lagos. Eminent personalities from all walks of life graced the occasion, which began with a red carpet and later turned into an evening of networking alongside drink and food. Johnny Baxter, the British Deputy High Commissioner in Lagos, gave the welcome address, stressing the relationship between Nigeria and the UK.
And of course, it was a highlight for us in Nigeria, and I'm sure a highlight for the King, was his meeting with His Excellency President Tinubu earlier in the year. And the warmth of that meeting was clearly visible in all of the photographs. And while we're remembering the late Queen, I would like to commend the National Museum for returning Ben Owanwu's statue of the Queen to public display. By this time next year, some of Ben's work will be centre stage in a major exhibition of Nigerian modernism at the Tate Modern in London. But for me, the exhibition at the National Museum, the descriptions of the media buzz at the time, and above everything else, the statue, produced by a man described as the star of Nigeria, And the subject, probably already, even at that time, the most famous woman in the world, a young Queen Elizabeth, should remind us of the long-standing and vibrant links between our two countries.
My heartfelt congratulations go to His Majesty on this special occasion. We join together today not only to honor the King's extraordinary life, but also to reflect on the enduring bond between the United Kingdom and Nigeria. A bond that is rich in history and one that we are committed to strengthening for the future. Our two countries share a complex and profound history, one that has shaped the course of our development and the world as we know it. For many decades, the United Kingdom and Nigeria were intricately linked, first through trade, later through colonial administration. The legacy of that time, while often a subject of great reflection and even difficult conversation, has also left us with an opportunity to rebuild and strengthen our relationship in a way that is mutually beneficial, respectful, and forward-thinking.
I am greatly pleased and feel highly honored to stand before you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today to extend my warmest congratulations and heartfelt best wishes to Your Majesty on the occasion of your 76th birthday. This is a momentous day, a celebration not only of your life, but also of your unwavering dedication to public service, environmental advocacy, and your profound commitment to enhancing the well-being of communities across the globe. As we gather in the spirit of celebration and friendship, we acknowledge Your Majesty's remarkable leadership and vision, which have inspired countless individuals and nations, including ours here in Lagos State, to embrace sustainability, harmony, and the values of inclusivity.
Our gracious King, long live our noble King, God save our King. Sail ahead, victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save
Right, that's King Charles' 76th birthday as it was marked here in Lagos.
I mean, yeah, King Charles' 76th birthday is there. I mean, it's been a very tumultuous year. But before I go straight into that, I just wanted to put some corrections in. In fact, when I was talking about the 1.8 million barrels, so I've just gotten confirmation that NUPRC had actually confirmed that we have 1.8 million, you know, we're producing 1.8 million barrels. This they did report it a couple of days ago. But it's been a tumultuous year for the family of the Saxo Gotha, or I should say, you know, the Windsor family. Been through tumultuous year. He's been battling cancer, and his daughter-in-law has also been battling cancer. And it just shows the humanity that anybody can fall ill. And at a time like this, you know, where there's a lot of change in the world, the emergence of Donald Trump, a new political party in the UK with the likes of Keir Starmer, and a lot going back and forth across Britain. Just a time to celebrate. There were very many ceremonies, you know, held in honor of the king, many gun salutes already made, and a lot of things, you know, happening. And in Nigeria here, the British community at the home of the Consul General has always behalf of activities for all of the friends of the UK and all of that. We have a rich history and partnership. You know, we have a rich relationship between Nigeria and the UK. started off being as colonizers, but now there's been a lot of trade partnership and trade relationship, but how we can still up the scale in Nigeria, that's it. But we can only say happy birthday, to the king. And but the part of the anthem that was being played, he's not reigning over us anyway, because we have long gotten our independence. It's just our leaders to be able to make this country great so that the independence will be worth the while.
Absolutely. Of course, there's been so many conversations around the Commonwealth and the significance of the Commonwealth and what nations like Nigeria, African nations, Caribbean nations need their relationship to be with the Commonwealth, from now moving forward, especially with the issue of reparations still being on the front burner. It's a massive conversation that is proving to be more divisive than one would have expected. However, when you look at King Charles, he certainly has less of a, shall I say, he carries less of the burden than his mother did, because we all know that the Queen reigned during a large portion of the period where colonization happened. So I think he does, to a degree, have a little bit of grace in that department, but it still won't take away the fact that these conversations are happening and they need to happen. As he celebrates his 76th birthday, that was celebrated here in Lagos, but also in the UK. He marked the occasion by championing against food poverty. He was in southeast London as part of his project to distribute surplus produce to people in food poverty. So I think that's a fantastic initiative for, for the royal family. We always like to see them engaged in philanthropy, and we wish him many more years in good health.